Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the framed photograph of her father that rested on her nightstand. The shadows of memory danced around her, whispering reminders of laughter that had long since faded into silence. Her father had always been a man of contradictions, loud yet distant, commanding yet vulnerable. As she traced the outline of his smile with her fingertip, a familiar ache welled up inside her, a blend of love and resentment that had festered over the years. Today marked the anniversary of his death, a date that had become a bittersweet ritual of reflection and grief. Before we dive deeper into Elena's journey, I urge you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support is invaluable. It allows us to share these poignant stories of love, loss, and redemption with more people. So please hit that subscribe button now. Elena's thoughts spiraled as she recalled the last time she had seen her brother, Leo. It had been over 2 decades since their lives had diverged into separate paths, each marked by pain and misunderstanding. A part of her wished she could look back on those years with a sense of nostalgia, but the weight of unresolved conflict loomed heavily over her heart. How could a family so full of love become so fractured? The answer eluded her as she shifted her gaze back to the photograph. As the clock ticked away the minutes, Elena felt an inexplicable tension in the air, a premonition of change. The phone rang abruptly, cutting through her reverie like a sharp knife. With a half-hearted glance, she picked it up, her heart racing as uncertainty flooded her mind. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen, contemplating whether to answer. The number was unfamiliar, but something compelled her to pick up. "Hello," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Elena?" The voice on the other end sent a jolt through her, a shockwave of recognition mixed with disbelief. It was Leo, her brother, the very person she had spent years trying to forget. The silence that had stretched between them felt both suffocating and liberating, a chasm filled with unspoken words and buried feelings. "I know it's been a long time," he started, his tone tentative, as if testing the waters of their strained relationship. "But I need to talk to you. It's about Dad." A rush of emotions surged within Elena, anger, confusion, and a flicker of hope. "What about him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He left something for us," Leo continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "A letter. It's in a safety deposit box. He wanted us to have it together." Elena's mind raced with questions. Why now? Why after all this time? The memories of their father's anger and the way it had torn their family apart flooded back, threatening to overwhelm her. "I can't just," she started, but Leo interrupted. "I know. I understand how you feel, but I think we owe it to him, to ourselves, to see what he wrote. This could change everything." The vulnerability in his voice cut through Elena's defenses. She had spent years building walls around her heart, convinced that the silence between them was a protective measure. Yet here was Leo, reaching out, willing to bridge the gap that had seemed insurmountable for so long. "Where do we meet?" she found herself asking, despite the trepidation clawing at her insides. They agreed to meet at the small cafe near their childhood home, a place that had once been a sanctuary filled with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked pastries. As she hung up the phone, Elena felt a mix of apprehension and a flicker of excitement. Perhaps this was the beginning of understanding, a chance to confront the past that had loomed over them like a dark cloud. The next day, as she prepared for their meeting, Elena felt the weight of her decision settle heavily upon her shoulders. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant outfit that felt like armor against the memories that threatened to resurface. The cafe was a familiar haunt, its exterior unchanged by the years, just as she had left it. But as she stepped inside, the atmosphere felt charged with memories, each table and chair echoing with laughter that had faded into the background of her life. Leo was already seated at a corner table, his fingers drumming nervously against the surface. The years had altered him. He was older, perhaps a little more weathered, but the essence of her brother remained, that spark of mischief and warmth she had cherished in their childhood. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Elena felt the walls she had built start to crumble, exposing the vulnerability beneath. "Hey," he said, his voice tentative yet warm. "Hey," she replied, taking a seat across from him, her heart pounding in her chest. The tension was palpable, a mixture of anticipation and fear. They exchanged small talk, the kind that felt forced and awkward as they navigated the emotional minefield that lay between them. Every word felt like a step towards something they both desperately needed: closure, understanding, forgiveness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of hesitation, Leo leaned forward, his expression serious. "I think we should go to the bank now. I need to show you the letter." Elena nodded, her stomach twisting in knots. The very thought of unearthing their father's secrets filled her with dread. What could possibly be in that letter that would justify the years of silence? And more importantly, would it bring them closer or push them further apart? As they made their way to the bank, the streets felt like a blur, her mind racing with possibilities. Each step was laden with the weight of their shared history. The laughter, the arguments, the distance that had grown like a chasm between them. Yet, beneath that weight was a flicker of hope, a desire to find a way back to one another. When they arrived, the air was thick with tension. The bank's sterile environment felt foreign to them, a stark contrast to the emotions swirling within. Together, they approached the teller, who guided them to a small room where the safety deposit box awaited. Elena's heart raced as Leo unlocked the box, revealing a neatly folded letter. As he handed it to her, she hesitated, the weight of the paper feeling heavier than it should. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Taking a deep breath, she opened the letter, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock on the wall. The words that unfolded before her were not just ink on paper. They were echoes of their father's life, his regrets, and the secrets that had shaped their past. And as she read, Elena felt the walls she had built begin to tremble, threatening to crumble in the face of the truth they had both long denied. In that moment, everything changed. The silence that had stretched between them for years was suddenly filled with the weight of revelation and the promise of forgiveness. Together, they would confront the shadows of their past. As Elena's eyes scanned the pages, the words began to unravel, a tapestry of pain and misunderstanding woven tightly by their father's hand. Each sentence was a thread pulling her deeper into the heart of the family secret that had haunted them for so long. She could feel Leo's presence beside her, a silent anchor as they both navigated the emotional labyrinth laid out in ink. "Dear Elena and Leo," the letter began, the familiar scrawl of their father's handwriting evoking a wave of nostalgia. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I've spent too many years reflecting on my life, the choices I made, and the consequences they bore. I want to explain myself, to share the truth behind the rifts that have kept you apart." Elena's breath hitched as she continued reading. The words painted a picture of a man who had been consumed by anger and regret, a man who had failed to protect his children from the fallout of his unresolved issues with their mother. He spoke of a betrayal that had spiraled into a cycle of manipulation and secrecy, a cycle that had ensnared both siblings, pushing them apart when they needed each other the most. "I want you to know that the distance between you both was not just a result of your choices," the letter continued. "It was my doing as well. My anger toward your mother clouded my judgment, and I allowed that anger to fester into a poison that seeped into our family. I manipulated the narrative, playing you against each other without realizing the damage I was causing. I am deeply sorry for the pain I inflicted on both of you." With each line, Elena felt a rush of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of betrayal. How could he have done this? How could he have wielded their pain as a weapon against each other? She glanced over at Leo, who sat silently, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. The revelations were hitting him as hard as they were hitting her, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind as he processed their father's words. "I have left you both with the burden of my mistakes," the letter continued. "But I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me and, more importantly, each other. You are siblings. Your bond is sacred. I wish I had understood that sooner. I hope you can break free from the chains of my past and build a future together." Elena's heart raced as she absorbed the final lines. Tear up this letter if you must, but know that forgiveness is a powerful tool. It has the potential to heal wounds that have festered for too long. I pray that you both find it in yourselves to forgive not just each other, but also me. I love you both. As she finished reading, the weight of the letter settled heavily in the silence that followed. The air felt thick with unspoken words, emotions swirling around them like a tempest. She looked up at Leo, whose eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I can't believe it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "All this time, it was him manipulating us." Elena nodded, her chest tightening as she fought to contain her own tears. "He took our pain and turned it into a weapon. He kept us apart when we needed each other the most." The anger that had simmered beneath the surface for so many years suddenly felt justified. It was a shared anger, one that had kept them apart for far too long. They had both been victims of their father's unresolved issues, and now, standing on the precipice of understanding, they had a choice to make. "Do we let this destroy us?" she asked, her voice trembling as she held the letter out toward Leo. "Or do we choose to forgive him and each other?" Leo took a deep breath, his expression shifting from shock to determination. "I don't want to carry this anger anymore. It's been too heavy for too long. I want to reclaim my life from this, whatever he did to us." Elena felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe this was the moment they had been waiting for. "Then let's do it," she urged, her heart pounding. "Let's tear it up together." With trembling hands, they both reached for the letter, their fingers brushing against each other, a physical reminder of the bond they shared. As they tore the letter in half, then again, the sound echoed in the small room, a symbolic release of the years of pain and resentment that had held them captive. As the pieces fell to the table, a weight lifted from Elena's shoulders. She felt lighter, freer, as though the very act of destruction had shattered the chains binding them to their father's mistakes. Leo looked at her, a tentative smile breaking through the remnants of sadness. "Maybe this is the start of something new," he said, his voice steady now. "Maybe it is," Elena replied, her heart swelling with possibility. "We can rebuild our relationship, Leo. We can be siblings again." The thought of it filled her with warmth, a promise of healing that stretched before them like a new dawn. They stood together, united in their decision to face the future hand in hand, their hearts open to the journey of forgiveness and renewal. As they exited the bank, the air felt different, charged with potential and the scent of fresh beginnings. Walking side by side, Elena felt a sense of connection with Leo that she had thought was lost forever. The conversation flowed easily between them, a comfortable rhythm that hinted at the sibling bond they had been robbed of for too long. There was still much to discuss, many emotions to unpack, but for the first time in years, Elena felt as though they were on the same side. The shadows of the past lingered at the edges of their awareness, but they no longer felt insurmountable. As they settled into a small corner table at the cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the laughter of other patrons. This place, once a sanctuary of joy, felt like it was becoming one again. "Do you remember the time we tried to bake Dad a cake for his birthday?" Leo asked, a hint of laughter in his tone. Elena's heart soared at the memory. "How could I forget? The kitchen was a disaster, and we ended up with more flour on our faces than in the batter." Leo chuckled, the sound warm and infectious, and he acted like it was the best cake he'd ever had, even with the burnt edges. They both laughed, the sound ringing out like a bell, a reminder of the joy that still existed within their connection. "Can we promise to create new memories?" Elena asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. "I don't want to lose you again." "Absolutely," Leo replied, his gaze steady and sincere. "We're in this together now. No more silence, no more distance." The words settled around them like a comforting blanket, a promise of a brighter future. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the cafe, Elena felt a profound sense of peace envelop her. This journey toward forgiveness and healing would not be easy, but for the first time in years, she was not alone. She had Leo by her side, and together, They would navigate the complexities of their past while forging a new path toward a future filled with love, understanding, and the shared bond of family. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. Together, they would not only uncover the truth, but also redefine what it meant to be siblings, choosing healing over hurt and love over silence. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the cafe, Elena felt a profound sense of peace envelop her. This journey toward forgiveness and healing would not be easy, but for the first time in years, she was not alone. She had Leo by her side, and together, they would navigate the complexities of their past while forging a new path toward a future filled with love, understanding, and the shared bond of family. The laughter shared over coffee became a balm for their wounds. As they reminisced about their childhood, every story brought them closer, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences that had once been overshadowed by bitterness. They spoke of their favorite games, the ridiculous costumes they had donned for Halloween, and the secret hideouts they had created in the backyard. Each memory was a thread, gently pulling them together, reminding them of the joy that had existed before their father's anger had cast a shadow over their lives. "Do you remember that summer we spent at Grandma's?" Leo asked, his eyes sparkling with nostalgia. "The one where we tried to catch fireflies every night?" Elena nodded, her heart swelling with warmth. "I remember. You were convinced you could train them to follow you. We spent hours running around the yard, and you ended up with more bites than fireflies." They both laughed again, the sound echoing like a sweet melody that filled the spaces of their hearts that had been barren for far too long. In that moment, the weight of their father's mistakes began to dissipate, replaced by a growing realization that their bond was resilient, capable of healing even the deepest rifts. "Leo," Elena said, her voice softening as she looked into his eyes, "I'm so sorry for the years we lost. I should have reached out. I let the anger and pain keep us apart." "I'm sorry too," he replied, sincerity lacing his words. "I was angry for so long, and I didn't know how to let that go. But now I see the importance of moving forward." As they spoke, the cafe around them buzzed with life. The clinking of cups and laughter of other patrons created a backdrop that felt strangely comforting. It was a world that had continued to spin while they had been ensnared in their own grief. But now, they were ready to step back into it together. Elena reached for Leo's hand, her fingers entwining with his, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "I want to build something new with you, something that honors our past but doesn't chain us to it. We can create new traditions, new memories." Leo squeezed her hand, a smile breaking across his face that lit up his features. "Yes, we can start with a family dinner. Just the two of us, maybe invite some friends, people who matter to us. It could be our new beginning." The idea resonated deeply within Elena. A family dinner was not just a meal. It was a symbol of their commitment to each other and to healing. "Let's make it a monthly thing," she suggested, excitement bubbling in her chest. "We can alternate who cooks and invite whoever we want. It'll be our way of reconnecting with the world." "Deal!" Leo exclaimed, enthusiasm radiating from him. "And we can also visit Grandma more often. She'll love to see us together again." Elena felt a warmth spread through her at the thought of being with their grandmother, who had always been a source of comfort and wisdom. "That sounds perfect. I've missed her stories. They always made everything feel brighter." With each new idea, they began sketching out the contours of their lives, mapping out a future filled with possibilities instead of shadows. The weight of their father's letter hung in the air, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was a catalyst for change, a reminder of how far they had come in such a short time. As the day waned and the evening sky turned a deep indigo, they left the cafe, stepping into the cool night air. The first stars began to twinkle, a constellation of hope lighting their path forward. They walked side by side, their shoulders brushing against each other, an unspoken promise hanging between them. "Elena," Leo said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I know we've got a long way to go, but I'm glad we're doing this together. I've missed having you in my life." "I've missed you too," she admitted, her heart swelling with emotion. This feels right, like we're finally on the right path. As they strolled through the familiar neighborhood streets, Elena felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. The memories of their childhood began to weave into the present, creating a tapestry that felt both rich and vibrant. They shared stories, laughter, and plans for the future, each moment reinforcing the bond they were rekindling. With each step, Elena realized that the years of silence had not erased their connection. They had merely buried it under layers of misunderstanding and pain. Now, as they began to peel those layers away, she could see the bright glimmers of hope shining through, the promise of a sibling relationship reborn. As they reached the corner where they had once played as children, Leo turned to her, a serious yet hopeful expression on his face. "We can't change what happened, but we can control how we move forward. We can honor Dad's memory by choosing to love each other instead of letting his mistakes tear us apart." Tears pricked at the corners of Elena's eyes as she nodded, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "You're right. Let's honor our past by creating a future filled with love and forgiveness." They stood there for a moment, the night enveloping them in its quiet embrace. And in that stillness, something profound shifted within Elena, a realization that she was no longer defined by her father's actions or the silence that had once consumed her. Instead, she was reclaiming her identity, one rooted in love, understanding, and the unwavering bond of family. As they walked home, laughter echoed in the air, mingling with the soft rustling of leaves. The future stretched before them like an open road, and together, they would navigate the twists and turns, hand in hand, sibling souls intertwined in an unbreakable bond. And so, as the years of silence fell away like autumn leaves, Elena and Leo stepped into the light of a new beginning, ready to embrace the journey ahead. Together, they would forge a path of forgiveness, love, and resilience, ensuring that the echoes of their past would serve as a foundation for an even brighter future.